My name is Lila Monroe. I'm 32. And until last fall, I thought I had a good grasp on reality. I'd always considered myself level-headed rational. The kind of woman who double-checks the locks, keeps receipts, and never posts too much on Instagram because you never know who's watching. I wasn't paranoid, I was practical. So, when I met Ethan Callahan at a charity art auction downtown, I didn't fall headfirst. I studied him like I would a painting I wasn't sure was authentic. Tall, warm, easy smile, successful in some vague family-run real estate business. Handsome, yes, but I was cautious. He said all the right things without sounding rehearsed. Called me Lila like it meant something. Paid attention. Remembered my drink order. Didn't make me feel like a conquest. He asked about my job, not just what do you do, but actual questions. About my opinions, my ideas. It felt rare. Too rare, maybe. But I'd been alone for a long time, and he felt like a man with roots. With structure. I'd grown up in a storm of instability, mother on pills, dad gone by my 9th birthday, shuffled from apartment to apartment. So when a man like Ethan said, "Come home with me," and meant it long term, I let myself believe it. Within 6 months, we were married. His proposal wasn't flashy, but it was earnest on the porch of his family's lake house, surrounded by pine trees and the echo of crickets. He said he wanted to build a life with me. I said yes, because I wanted that too. That's when I met her, Margot. She was his mother, but she didn't introduce herself that way. No warm hugs, no cookies, no framed baby photos of Ethan. She just watched. Stood at the edge of the driveway like she was checking off a list, and I was a box that still hadn't been ticked. "You're smaller than I imagined," she said. No smile. "That's not a criticism, just an observation." I laughed nervously. "Is that good or bad?" She didn't answer, just tilted her head and said, "Well, come on then. Let's see what you're made of." I thought it was just the way some mothers are with their sons' girlfriends, territorial, unimpressed. I chalked it up to generational tension. But that wasn't it. That wasn't it at all. We moved into a house Ethan said his father had bought years ago, but never used. It was beautiful. Cold, but beautiful. Black shutters, a winding staircase. Hardwood floors so polished I felt wrong stepping on them barefoot. The kind of house you see in magazines and assume no one actually lives in. When I asked if we could paint the bedroom, Ethan hesitated. "It's just that my mom really likes this color." "She's not sleeping in here," I said with a light tone. "I know," he replied quickly. "Of course, just..." She put a lot of time into decorating. I didn't think too much of it then. It was just paint. Until I opened the linen closet one night looking for extra towels and found a set of monogrammed ones. The initials weren't EC or LM. They were EC and AM. I froze, pulled one out. The embroidery was still stiff as if it had never been washed. They were expensive Egyptian cotton ivory with pale blue thread. "Who's AM?" I asked Ethan that night as we lay in bed. The room still half-painted our belongings, only partially unpacked. He didn't answer at first, just stared at the ceiling. "Then it was my fiancé. Before you?" Something inside me chilled. "I didn't know you were engaged." "I didn't talk about it because it ended badly," he said. "She passed away. 3 years ago. Car accident. It was horrible." I sat up. "You never mentioned her. Not once." "I didn't want to bring her ghost into our life," he said. "That wouldn't be fair to you." I understood that. I did. But it still felt strange that our house had towels bearing her initials. And not just that. A few days later, I found a silver hairbrush on the dresser in the guest room. It had AM engraved on the back, too. It looked antique. Worn down at the handle from years of use. I told myself it didn't matter. People hold on to things. Grief is messy. Maybe Margot wasn't over the loss of the woman she expected to marry her son. Maybe this was her way of preserving that dream. I told myself that a lot. But then I found the photo. It was tucked behind a loose panel in the upstairs bathroom. Ethan had asked me to get something from the supply cabinet. And when I reached in, I felt the edge give way. The photo fell at my feet. It was black and white, faintly blurred, but the woman in it, she looked exactly like me. Same jawline, same straight dark hair, same crooked left eyebrow. Except the woman in the photo was wearing a wedding dress. And Ethan was next to her. They were smiling like they had the whole world ahead of them. When I showed him, Ethan stared at the photo like it had crawled out of his past to haunt him. "That's not what it looks like," he said. "Is that you?" He nodded slowly. "And that woman AM, was she?" "Yes." "Then how do you explain this?" She wasn't just my fiancée, he whispered. We were married. Briefly. No one knew. I dropped the photo like it burned. You lied to me. I didn't know how to tell you. You've never even mentioned her name. He looked away. She wasn't supposed to die, he said. She wasn't supposed to leave. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I found a necklace in my drawer. One I didn't recognize. Silver delicate with a small A charm. I never put it there, but someone did. And that's when I realized I wasn't becoming Ethan's wife. I was becoming someone else's ghost. I didn't wear the necklace. I tucked it in the back of my jewelry box beneath a tangle of old bracelets I never wore anymore. But its weight haunted me. I could feel it pressing against the silence in our house, like an invisible hand on my throat. I started watching Ethan, not in a suspicious, jealous way, but like I didn't know him anymore, like I'd married a stranger who came wrapped in my favorite packaging. He still kissed me goodbye every morning, still made my coffee the way I liked it, oat milk, no sugar, but now I wondered what he was thinking while he stirred it. If he was picturing someone else across from him. If I'd been chosen because I looked like her. It felt paranoid. Except I kept finding pieces of her. A red lipstick in the medicine cabinet. I never wore red lipstick. A pair of silk gloves in the coat closet too small for my hands. A black lace slip that definitely wasn't mine, folded neatly in the guest room drawer. Ethan, I asked him one night as we lay in bed, did you keep her things? His body stiffened under the sheets. No, he said slowly. I donated everything. To who? I don't remember. A charity. Margot handled it. Margot. That name now sent a ripple of dread down my spine every time it left someone's mouth. Since our wedding, she'd been oddly absent, no surprise visits, no welcome casseroles, no calls. I'd assumed she didn't approve of me, which I was fine with. But suddenly, her absence felt strategic, too clean, like a stage being prepared for a new performance. One day, I found her standing in the backyard. Just standing. I saw her through the kitchen window while washing dishes. Her face turned toward the house unmoving, like she was trying to memorize the silhouette of our living room, or confirm it hadn't changed. I opened the back door. Margot? She turned smiling tightly. Lila, what a lovely surprise. I live here, I said, trying to keep my voice light. Can I help you with something? I was just visiting the hydrangeas. I planted them years ago. They never really took to anyone else's touch. They're doing fine now, I said. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Are they? That night I told Ethan about the visit. He barely reacted. She's just being sentimental, he said, brushing it off. This house has a lot of family memories for her. Does it? I asked. Because I thought your dad bought it and no one used it. His eyes flicked to mine too quickly. Right, that's what I meant. I didn't press it, but I started digging. It's amazing what you can find when you stop accepting the story someone gives you. The deed to the house was still in Ethan's father's name, but there was a second owner listed A.M. Callahan, Ava Margot Callahan, his first wife, the woman no one talked about, the woman who was supposed to be a ghost. She still owned this house, which meant it wasn't ours. It never had been. And the real reason I was here was starting to terrify me, because I wasn't sure Ethan had married me for me. I think he married me to bring her back. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay beside Ethan, his breathing slow, and even while my mind unraveled in every direction. The shadows in our bedroom stretched long against the wall, and in their darkness I saw her Ava. A shape I'd never met, never heard speak, but whose presence was slowly eclipsing my own life. The next morning I called the county clerk's office. Yes, the woman on the other end said, after a moment of tapping. The co-ownership was never revoked. Technically, if she's not deceased and hasn't signed off, the property is still half hers. She's dead, though, right? I asked already, fearing the answer. I don't see a death certificate on file. I hung up before I could think better of it. My fingers were trembling. Either there had been a bureaucratic error, or Ava wasn't dead. The questions piled up faster than I could silence them. Why hadn't Ethan told me she still legally owned the house? Why had he never shown me a wedding photo? Why was Margot acting like a hostess, returning to a party that hadn't ended? That afternoon, I took a walk through the house. Not to clear my mind, but to look. Really look. For her. In the attic beneath a dusty tarp, I found an old hope chest. It wasn't locked. Inside were dresses, her dresses. Pale silk vintage cuts, still smelling faintly of perfume. There was a pair of point shoes tucked carefully beside a dried bouquet of peonies, and a leather-bound book. Not a diary. A planner. The last entry was dated just 3 years ago. 3 years. I flipped through it with shaking fingers, appointments, notes, grocery lists, and then a single line underlined twice. Call the lawyer, he said I need a plan. My stomach dropped. I snapped a photo of the page and ran it through Google Lens. The handwriting matched a sample I found online, a public performance review from when Ava was briefly a ballet instructor. It was her. She'd written it. And it meant she had been alive long after Ethan claimed she was gone. I confronted him that night. Ethan, I said, holding out the planner, what is this? His eyes flicked to it, then back to me. Where did you get that? In the attic, where you hid her things. His jaw tensed. You're reading too much into it. She was alive 3 years ago. He stood up, moving toward the window away from me. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, voice rising. Why did you lie? He turned slowly, and in that moment I saw something break through his usual calm panic. Brief but unmistakable. I didn't lie, he said too quickly. She was gone. She left. Left what you, this house, her life. Why are her clothes still here? Why is her planner dated 3 years ago? Because she was sick, Lila, he said suddenly. She wasn't well. My breath caught. What do you mean? He walked back, sat down. His voice dropped low. She thought the house was watching her. She believed there were messages hidden in the wallpaper, that the hydrangeas whispered things. She talked to herself for hours in the mirror. I tried to get her help, but she disappeared before I could do anything. Disappeared? He nodded. One day she packed a bag and walked out. No note, no goodbye. Did you file a missing person report? He looked away again. No, he admitted. She made me promise I wouldn't. That made no sense. No report, no funeral, no proof. She's not dead, is she? I whispered. You've never said it. Not once. You've said she left. You've said she was gone. But you've never said she died. Ethan said nothing. He just stared at the wall. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. She might still be alive. And I was living in the shell of her life. I spent the next 2 days in a daze. Everything around me felt like a carefully painted illusion that was slowly cracking just enough to let the truth peek through. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined her. Ava, standing in the corner of the room watching me with hollow eyes, arms crossed, whispering, "This was mine first." Ethan acted like everything was normal. He cooked dinner, he folded laundry. He even kissed my forehead when I passed him in the hallway. But the normalcy felt performed, rehearsed, like he was running through a script we'd both forgotten how to believe. On the third night, I went into the backyard, phone in hand, and called the number I'd found scribbled in the margins of Ava's planner. The one labeled only David, Plan B. The voice that answered was deep cautious. "This is David." "Hi," I said, heart pounding. "You don't know me. My name is Lila. I found your number in Ava Wilson's planner." There was silence, a long, heavy silence. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said finally. "She was your client, wasn't she? Or your friend, or your something." Another pause. Then just before he hung up, a soft, almost fearful murmur. "She told me this might happen." I froze. "She told you what?" But the line went dead. I stood there for several minutes staring into the darkness, the weight of the phone like a brick in my hand. Whoever David was, he knew Ava, and she'd prepared him for me. Why, the next morning I received an envelope in the mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single photograph, old yellowing slightly. In it, a woman who looked hauntingly like me stood in front of the house. My house. But the photo was dated 2018. Ava. Her arm was draped around Ethan's waist. But it wasn't a happy pose. Her eyes looked strained, like she was forcing the smile. Like she knew something no one else did. And behind them, taped to the second-story window, was a message written in red ink on a sheet of white paper. "Help me!" I dropped the photo. My pulse was deafening in my ears. This wasn't just a broken marriage or a woman who left. This was a woman trying to escape. I ran upstairs and began tearing through every drawer in the house, every closet. I didn't know what I was looking for, proof maybe, or a trail, anything to tell me where she'd gone. In the back of the linen closet, I found a panel in the wall, loose, barely visible. I pried it open with a butter knife. Inside was a box, taped shut. And inside the box were 6 cassette tapes, each one labeled in delicate handwriting. Ava, tape 1. Ava, tape 2. Through tape 6. My hands were shaking too hard to hold them. I didn't own a cassette player. Who does anymore? But Ethan did. He had one in his office, a dusty old stereo system he'd refused to get rid of because it had sentimental value. I waited until he went to the grocery store that afternoon. He said he'd be back in 20 minutes. I had exactly that long. I slid in the first tape. It clicked. Word, then a voice, soft, breathy, and cracked with fear. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it out. Or worse, I came back. I froze. My name is Ava Wilson, and I'm recording this because I don't know how much longer I'll be sane or safe. If you're in the house, please get out. Please. My entire body went cold. Ethan isn't who you think he is. The front door creaked open downstairs. He was home. I ejected the tape, shoved all 6 back into the box, and pushed the panel back into place, just as his footsteps echoed on the stairs. "Hey babe," he called. "They were out of oat milk again. Want almond instead." I swallowed the scream rising in my throat. "Almond's fine," I called back. Then I smiled. Because now I knew something he didn't. And I wasn't leaving. Not yet. Not until I heard every single tape. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Ethan, his breathing steady, rhythmic, oblivious. I stared at the ceiling, eyes wide open, the echo of Ava's voice whispering over and over in my ears. "If you're in the house, please get out." But I wasn't leaving. I couldn't. Something darker than fear had taken root inside me now, something closer to obsession. At 3:12 a.m., I slipped out of bed, silent, barefoot. I tiptoed into Ethan's office and retrieved the box of tapes, clutching it to my chest like a secret weapon. I made my way to the laundry room, the only room in the house without a vent connected to the rest, and shut the door behind me. I slid in tape 2. Ava's voice crackled to life. "Tape 2. If you're still listening, then maybe you're the next one. Or maybe you're the last." There was a long pause, the sound of her breathing. I thought I was in love. God, I was so stupid. He was perfect at first, charming, attentive, generous. He listened. That's what he does best, you know. He listens just long enough to know what you're afraid of. A shiver crawled down my spine. He told me I reminded him of his mother. Said she died when he was young. That I had her eyes, her smile. The way I touched the back of his neck when I kissed him goodnight. At the time, I thought it was sweet. But now I wonder if she ever existed at all. I paused the tape. My breathing was shallow. He'd said that to me too. That I had his mother's smile. That he hadn't seen eyes like mine since she died in childbirth. I pressed play again. He didn't like when I asked questions. About his past. About his work. His office was always locked when I wasn't home. He said it was to keep the cats out. We never had a cat. My stomach flipped. And then one day I found the room. The tape went silent. Then Ava laughed. A hollow, humorless sound. "You'll find it too. If you stay long enough. You'll start noticing the drafts. The walls that echo wrong. The books on the shelves that never move even when you dust them." I pressed pause again. My eyes darted toward the hallway, the bookshelf in the living room. The one Ethan insisted we never reorganize because it was perfect the way it is. I sat there for hours, listening to tape 2 twice, then tape 3. Each word Ava spoke felt like a thread unraveling reality. By sunrise, I wasn't sure where my mind ended and hers began. The next day, I made excuses to stay home. Ethan had a client meeting across town and wouldn't be back until late. I waited for the sound of his car to disappear. Then I went straight to the bookshelf. I pulled a few volumes off the middle shelf titles Ethan never read but insisted on keeping. Wuthering Heights, The Art of War, a copy of The Bell Jar with no notes, no highlights, just display. I ran my fingers along the wood paneling behind the books, and then I felt it. A soft click beneath my hand. My heart shot into my throat. I pushed. A panel of the wall swung open like a door. Behind it, a staircase. Narrow, cramped, leading down. The air that spilled out was stale, cold. It didn't smell like dust. It smelled like something preserved. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and descended. The stairs creaked under my weight, each step groaning like it hadn't been touched in years. I counted 17 steps before my foot hit solid concrete. I was in a basement that wasn't on the blueprints Ethan showed me when we bought the house. The flashlight beam swept across the room, revealing walls covered in soundproofing foam, a mattress on the floor, a single chair in the corner, and on the far side another shelf, lined with tapes. Not cassettes. VS. Each one labeled in the same careful handwriting. Ava, Week 3, Ava, Week 4, Subject 2, Day 11, Subject 3, Final Session. I dropped the flashlight. The crash echoed through the room. I scrambled to pick it up, heart thundering in my chest. I hadn't known what I expected, but it hadn't been this. This wasn't just a woman who left. This wasn't just a marriage that went wrong. This was a history of women, of subjects, and I was next in line. I backed out of the hidden basement, as if the air itself had turned poisonous. My hands trembled, my legs weak beneath me, barely holding my weight. Every instinct screamed for me to run out of the room, out of the house, out of this life I thought was mine. But I didn't run. Not yet. Instead, I sealed the bookshelf door carefully, exactly as I'd found it. I replaced the books in their perfect, untouched order. Because Ethan couldn't know what I had seen, not until I understood what it meant. Not until I knew exactly who I was married to. I spent the next hour pacing the living room, biting my nails, to the quick staring at the innocuous furniture Ethan had picked out. The green velvet couch, the minimalist dining table, the copper floor lamp he insisted made the room feel warm. Every object now felt curated, placed for a performance. And I wasn't sure if I was the audience or the unwitting star. I had to see what was on those tapes. There was only one problem: we didn't own a VHS player. At least I thought we didn't. But Ethan had a storage unit. He kept sentimental junk there, he said. Things from his childhood, old tech, boxes of things he wasn't ready to throw out. I had the key on my ring. It was a risk, but I couldn't go back into that room, not without knowing what I'd be watching. So I left, locked the front door behind me, drove to the nondescript building 5 miles east, a climate-controlled space Ethan barely visited. The receptionist at the front desk didn't even look up as I walked past. Inside the unit I had to dig, past a cracked guitar case, a box labeled college stuff, old computer monitors, a bike with 2 flat tires. And then I found it an old Panasonic VHS player, still coiled with cables, dust-covered but intact. I brought it home. It took me almost an hour to hook it up to our TV. My hands fumbled the entire time. I kept looking toward the door like he'd burst through it at any second, that unreadable smile on his face. Looking for something, Cassie. But the door never opened. I inserted the first VHS tape. It clicked with a soft mechanical hum. Ava, week 3. The screen flickered. For a moment, just static. And then a room. The same basement room I had just seen with my own eyes. Same mattress, same chair, same shelf in the background. Ava sat in the chair, her hands folded in her lap, shoulders slumped, hair messier than the polished photo I'd seen in the hallway. She looked hollowed out. She looked tired. There was no audio for the first 30 seconds. Just the eerie, mechanical silence of a camera pointed at a woman who seemed to have lost her voice. And then she looked directly at the camera. Her lips moved, barely, but I could read them. Help me. I rewound it, played it again. Help me. Tears welled in my eyes. My stomach turned to knots. What the hell had Ethan done to her? The video cut to black suddenly. Then another scene. Ava in the same chair, this time rocking slightly. A man's voice off screen. Familiar, calm, controlled. Tell me about your dreams, Ava. She didn't respond at first. Then with a cracked voice, you were in them. What was I doing? Long pause. You took out my eyes, said I saw too much. The camera held still. No reaction from the man, no shock, no laughter. Just a slow rustling of paper like someone taking notes. The footage cut again. Ava was standing now, her arms crossed over her chest like she was cold. There was something written on the wall behind her, smeared in what looked like red lipstick. I am not her. I hit stop, pulled the tape out like it was contaminated. My fingers shook as I shoved it back into the box. Then I grabbed the next one. Subject 2, day 11. Different woman. Younger, brunette, pale with dark circles under her eyes. I didn't recognize her. She looked terrified. She was naked from the waist up, clutching a blanket around her shoulders, sitting in the same chair. The same man's voice. You disobeyed. She shook her head violently. No, I didn't. I only went upstairs for a second, I swear. You were told not to. You broke the rules. And now we start again. She screamed then, a raw animal scream. I stopped the tape. I couldn't watch anymore. This wasn't a breakup story. This wasn't a divorce waiting to happen. This was a crime scene. And I was married to the man who orchestrated it. I curled up on the floor, knees to my chest, hugging my body tight. I felt unclean. Like just being in the house was infecting me. I didn't know what to do. Who do you call when your husband might be a serial predator, a manipulator, a captor? I considered the police. But what would I say? My husband has a hidden room full of tapes of women being psychologically tormented, and possibly worse. They'd need more than that. They'd need evidence. And if Ethan found out I'd seen the tapes before I could act, I didn't want to imagine what would happen next. That night, I slept in the guest room. I locked the door, propped a chair against it, and clutched my phone all night like a lifeline. I had entered his world, but I wasn't ready to let him know I saw it. Not yet. I barely slept that night. Every creak in the house became a threat. Every car passing by made my breath catch, expecting Ethan's key to twist in the lock. But he didn't come home. His absence was a gift and a curse. A gift because I needed time to think, to plan, to decide whether I was going to run or fight. A curse because the silence let my imagination spiral unchecked. I lay in bed long past sunrise, watching the weak morning light stretch across the guest room wall. Part of me hoped I would wake up to discover it was all a fever dream, that I hadn't found a hidden chamber in my home, hadn't watched videos of women being broken apart like dolls. But the stack of VHS tapes beside the TV said otherwise. The images were burned into my brain. Ava's vacant eyes, that lipstick scrawl on the wall. I am not her. Who was her? And who was Ethan trying to recreate? That day I called in sick to work. I couldn't bring myself to fake normalcy. My boss's voice was understanding, maybe even a little concerned, but I brushed it off. Just a stomach thing, I said. I paced the living room for hours. I wanted answers, but I didn't want to watch another woman unravel on tape. So instead, I did something I hadn't done since we moved in. I started investigating my own house. I began in the bedroom, pulled open Ethan's closet. I'd always respected his space kept to my side, but now all bets were off. I rifled through his drawers, his shoeboxes, his coat pockets. Nothing, just clothes, receipts, mints. Then, in the inside pocket of one of his blazers, I found a photo. It was old, Polaroid style. The edges were frayed. A girl. She looked like she was maybe 20. She had long blonde hair like mine, same build. Even the way she tilted her head reminded me of my reflection, but I had never seen her before. Written in faint pen at the bottom, Emma 9... Am Summerhouse, 2003. I sat on the floor and stared at it, heart-pounding. Was this her? Was Ethan trying to turn Ava, and maybe me, into her? The thought made my skin crawl. I flipped the photo over. Just more handwriting, faint and scrawled. She was perfect before she changed. I swallowed hard. This wasn't love, this was obsession. And maybe something worse. The next place I checked was Ethan's office. He always kept the door open, never locked it, but I rarely went in. It was cold masculine. Steel furniture, books arranged with almost robotic precision. There was a locked drawer in his desk. Figures. I grabbed a flathead screwdriver from the kitchen and with some effort popped the lock. Inside were notebooks. Dozens. All identical. Black unmarked covers. No dates. I picked one at random and opened it. The handwriting was small, neat, clinical. Subject number 4, progress update. Day 9 shows signs of resistance. Refuses to make eye contact for more than a few seconds. Attempts at small talk ineffective. May require phase 2 conditioning. Day 10 broke down during dinner protocol. Complained about the lighting. Initiated a hunger strike. Applied temporary isolation and visual deprivation. Responded negatively. Increased dosage to 40 mg. My fingers trembled as I flipped through more pages. The language was sterile. Detached. Like he was documenting lab rats. Each subject was given a code. No real names. But when I got to subject number 6, my stomach flipped. Cassie, day 17. My name. My name. I dropped the notebook like it burned me. This wasn't a marriage. This was a study. Had I always been subject number 6, or did I become her the day we moved into the house? There were notes on our conversations, on my reactions. Times I laughed, times I cried. Arguments he'd engineered, emotions he'd documented. I read Cassie shows early signs of destabilization. Dreams are shifting. Increasing resemblance to M, not yet aware of the project. Maintain routine. The project. What project? Who was M? And why did he need me to resemble her? My mouth went dry as I flipped to the final page of that notebook. Subject number 6, becoming emotionally volatile. Threat of discovery imminent. Prepare contingency. Contingency. What did that mean? My phone buzzed. I jolted and looked. It was Ethan. Heading home, want Thai. Just that. So casual. So normal. Like the man who had a hidden basement for psychological torture and a file cabinet of broken women was just asking if I wanted pad thai or green curry. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I took pictures of the notebook, every page. I uploaded them to a private cloud. Then I did the same for the photo, for the tapes. I needed insurance. I had no doubt anymore Ethan was dangerous. He had a method, a process, a system for control. And I was next. Or maybe I already was. I spent the next half hour erasing any evidence that I had been in his things, locking the drawer again, returning the screwdriver, hiding the VHS player. And then I waited. The front door opened at 6:14 p.m. Cass, he called, keys jangling. You okay? Didn't answer my text. I forced a smile. Yeah, I said, trying not to choke on the lie, just tired. He appeared in the hallway with takeout bags, kissed my cheek. His scent clean soap, that woody cologne, made my stomach churn. He looked at me with those eyes that once made me feel safe. Now I just wondered how many lies were behind them. Let's eat, he said, and I sat across from him at the dinner table, nodding and smiling, while the man I loved chewed pad thai and made small talk about his day. But inside, I was already planning how to escape. That night, while Ethan slept soundly beside me, I lay awake with eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling fan, slowly spinning overhead like a clock winding down. I could hear his breathing slow and even, completely at peace. As if he hadn't documented my breakdowns. As if he hadn't studied me like I was an insect in a jar. His arm lay across my waist, possessive, familiar, chilling. I didn't move. Not yet. I knew now I couldn't just leave. Not without knowing exactly what I was running from. There were still too many shadows in this house, too many unanswered questions. And one name echoing in my mind like a ghost M. The girl in the photo. The girl I was being reshaped into. Who was she? Where was she? Why did she matter so much that Ethan had sacrificed 6 women to recreate her? I waited until 3:47 a.m. He was snoring lightly. I slipped out of bed, soundless, heart pounding. I padded barefoot across the cold floor through the hallway and back into the basement. I flicked on the light. My stomach still churned at the sight of the recording room, the padded bench, the industrial lighting. The tapes had been moved since yesterday. Someone, or Ethan, had reorganized them alphabetically. I spotted a new one on the table with today's date written in neat marker. He had recorded me again, while I thought we were eating dinner. While I pretended to laugh, I left it untouched. Instead, I turned my attention to the file cabinet in the corner. I'd been too afraid to open it before. Now I yanked it open. Folders, labeled simply M1 through M7. I opened M1. Inside, printed photos, doctor's reports, therapy notes, drawings, sketches of a woman's face over and over, slight variations, notes in Ethan's handwriting. M's original symmetry near perfect. Preferred hair long light, natural wave. Voice modulation required, subject to failed. My throat tightened. These weren't just past relationships. They were experiments. Every woman he dated, if you could call it dating, was an iteration. A failed version of her. Of M. I opened M2. A note paper-clipped to the front, voluntary subject. Lost interest after 11 days. Terminated contact. A sticky note below it. Didn't cry during phase 1. Not authentic enough. What the hell was phase 1? I opened M3 and my stomach turned. A police report. Not filed by Ethan, but about him. An anonymous domestic disturbance complaint from 2014. No charges filed. No names. Just a brief statement. Male subject controlling locked female in home office, confiscated phone. He had a pattern. A system. And each file was a progression. Until I found M5. Ava. Her full name was Ava Marin. There was a printed photo from what looked like a driver's license. Blonde. Blue eyes. Gentle smile. But the real horror came in the form of a letter. Handwritten, slanted, trembling. If you're reading this, I didn't make it out. His name isn't really Ethan. At least I don't think so. He made me call him that. I don't know where we are. I've tried to leave 3 times. The camera's reset. The doors lock. If you're the next one. I'm so sorry. My knees gave out. I sat on the cold floor of the basement, the letter trembling in my hands. She knew. She left breadcrumbs. This wasn't just manipulation. It was entrapment. A methodical psychological trap. And then I noticed the last folder, M7. My file. I hadn't seen it before. It had been tucked behind the others, as if he hadn't wanted it easily found. Inside, pages and pages of notes about my job, my routines, my mother, her name, her illness, the hospital records. I didn't even know how he'd gotten those. And then I found it, a printed email exchange from 3 years ago. To Ethan Hale, from Margaret Spencer, my mother's hospice nurse. Subject follow-up from visit. Ethan. As discussed, Cassandra's mother has requested no further family involvement at this time. She was very clear that she did not want her daughter burdened. I agree we should allow Cassie space during this difficult time. Let me know if there's anything else I can provide. Regards, Margaret. My vision blurred. He had known me before I knew him. He had planned it. He had been watching my mother die from a distance, inserting himself into the corners of my grief before I even knew his name. The entire relationship, it wasn't fate. It was premeditation. He had chosen me, like a role to cast, like a doll to dress up. I staggered to my feet, fury flooding me, panic right behind. He had stolen my life, my memories, my grief, and he was still upstairs, sleeping, breathing, planning his next move. Suddenly I knew what I had to do. Not run. Not yet, because if I ran, he'd find someone else. And she wouldn't know what I knew. She wouldn't be ready. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for M1 through M6, and whoever he would try to make into M8. It ends with me. I spent the next 48 hours pretending nothing had changed, that I hadn't found the files or Ava's letter or the blueprint of my own life laid out like an instruction manual. I smiled at Ethan over breakfast, kissed him goodnight, let him hold me as we watched a documentary on architecture, his favorite genre probably because it mirrored how he saw people's structures to design, restore, or demolish. But inside I was a furnace, quietly feeding fuel to the fire of everything I now knew. I wasn't ready to confront him, not yet. I needed leverage. So I started collecting. First I returned to the basement and scanned every document from the M files, sending digital copies to a dummy email address I created at a library terminal. I also recorded short voice memos, my own narration of the evidence describing what I'd found, where it was hidden, how long it had been there. I wasn't going to be another ghost in his collection. I was going to leave a record. Second, I bought a hidden camera. A small pen-sized device I slipped into the bookshelf in the living room, angled perfectly toward the hall. I needed video of him, preferably doing something he didn't realize I knew about. I needed evidence that couldn't be dismissed as a misunderstanding or emotional instability, the way Ava had likely been painted. And third, I began pushing him gently, testing the walls of my new prison. Do you remember when we met? I asked over dinner one night, stabbing a fork into a piece of grilled chicken I hadn't tasted. He smiled like it was a fond memory. Of course, the coffee shop on 4th. You were wearing that oversized gray sweater. That wasn't true. I'd been wearing a red peacoat. I remembered because the buttons kept popping open. I tilted my head. Funny, I remember a different outfit. He paused barely, then shrugged. I could be wrong. You rarely are, I said, smiling too sweetly. He didn't respond. Later that night, I planted a decoy journal. I knew he snooped. I needed to know how much. So I wrote entries by hand in a spiral notebook, placing it in my dresser drawer, just visible enough to tempt. The entries were fake, harmless, designed to bait. They read things like, maybe I was wrong about Ethan. He's more thoughtful than I give him credit for. I should stop doubting his intentions. The next day, the journal had been moved slightly. 2 days later, Ethan brought me flowers. Unprompted. He had read it. He wanted me to believe I was healing, trusting again. But what he didn't realize was I was already writing the ending. The real one. Then came the first slip. It was early evening. He'd gone for a run, part of his daily ritual, exactly 3.2 miles, always the same route. I knew he'd be gone for 30 minutes. I opened his laptop. The password was still the same, Margaret77. I opened a hidden folder on the desktop called Project Revival. Inside, a video file labeled M-Final Rendered to MP4. I clicked play. The screen flickered. Then I saw her. The girl from the photo. The original M. She was sitting in what looked like our living room years ago, speaking into the camera. Her voice was soft, hesitant. The video was raw, unedited. At first I thought it was a video diary, but then Ethan's voice came from off-screen again. Slower this time. She started over. I'm M. I live here with Ethan. He takes care of me. He helps me remember who I am. A chill slid down my spine. It was a script. He had written her identity. Like a movie director, like a puppeteer. In the video, she began to cry but didn't stop. She kept reading, voice quivering, like she'd been taught that crying was normal, expected, maybe even required. I watched as he walked into frame and adjusted the camera. He touched her shoulder. She flinched. I paused the video, closed the laptop. I couldn't watch more, not yet. But one thing was now painfully, horrifically clear. This wasn't just obsession. It was replication. He wasn't looking for love. He was looking for obedience. I sat on the floor, surrounded by this man's digital insanity, and finally allowed myself to feel the fear. The real fear. Not the nervous flutters of someone who senses something is off, but the raw animal kind. The kind that tells you you're in the lair of something cold-blooded, and that every warm smile was camouflage. He had failed to recreate her in the others. I was M7, but he believed I might be the final one. The perfect one. I knew what came next, and I knew I only had days to stop it. The next morning, Ethan was different. He made pancakes from scratch, something he hadn't done since the early days of our relationship, and served them with fresh berries coffee exactly how I liked it, and a strange, hovering attentiveness. The kind that didn't feel like care. It felt like observation. "You seem lighter today," he said as I forced a bite down my throat, like something's clicked. I nodded slowly, hiding my nausea behind a smile. I guess I've been overthinking things. He reached across the table, touching my hand with a rehearsed tenderness. "I'm proud of you." I nearly laughed. Proud of me. Like I was a project that had finally responded to treatment. After breakfast, I excused myself to go read in the bath and locked the bathroom door. I turned on the water, and the fan then pulled my phone out of its hiding spot behind the linen cabinet. The camera I'd set up had captured something the night before. At 2:14 a.m. while I was sleeping, Ethan walked into my home office. He stood in the dark for several minutes before opening the drawer where I kept my fake journal. He took it out, sat in my chair, and began flipping through it slowly, page by page. His face calm, his body relaxed. He wasn't looking for information. He was checking progress. Was I becoming who he wanted? Was I internalizing the script? But the footage also gave me something more valuable. It proved intent, premeditation, manipulation. I uploaded the clip to my dummy email, then sent it to a second cloud drive with a note attached. "If anything happens to me, start with Ethan Wilson. This is not fiction." I included my name address, his name aliases, and a summary of what I had discovered so far. I wasn't running yet, but I needed an exit strategy. Over the next week, I played the part. I praised Ethan's cooking. I giggled at his stories. I let him touch me even when I wanted to crawl out of my skin. And slowly he relaxed, which made him reckless. He started leaving his laptop open more often. His notes were less encrypted. His mask, now convinced of my compliance, began to slip. And that's when I found the book. A black leather binder hidden in his filing cabinet behind a false wall. The cover read M Archive. Inside were tabs, each labeled with a woman's name, or rather an initial followed by a number. M1, M2, M3, then M6, Ava, M7, Claire, M8. My name wasn't in it, because he hadn't finished deciding what version I was yet. The binder was grotesquely detailed. Photos, journal entries, not theirs. His written from their perspectives, timelines of progress, and notes like, M3 failed to stabilize after incident with her father, relapse inevitable. M5 exhibited signs of boundary assertion intervention unsuccessful. M6 Ava showed greatest potential. May attempt recovery model with similar baseline subject in future. That last one stopped me cold. Ava was the prototype, and I was the clone. I closed the binder, my hands trembling, and returned everything exactly how I'd found it. I barely slept that night. I lay beside Ethan in bed, staring at the ceiling while he dreamed of control. 2 days later, he suggested a weekend away. "Just the two of us," he said, rubbing my shoulders. I rented a cabin upstate. No phones, no distractions, just you and me. It was presented like a gift. It felt like a finale. Sounds perfect, I lied. But I wasn't going to the cabin. I had another plan. That night, while Ethan was in the shower, I took my go bag, prepped with clothes, IDs, cash, and a burner phone, and slipped it into the neighbor's garage. I'd befriended them months ago, a quiet, retired couple who traveled often and had given me a spare key just in case. I also handed them a sealed envelope. "If I ever don't come back," I told the wife Cheryl, "mail this to the address on the front." Her eyes widened. "Honey, is everything okay?" "Not yet," I said, "but it will be." On the morning of the cabin trip, Ethan packed the car, meticulously humming to himself. I stood by the door, my bag in hand, wearing the dress he said made me look soft around the edges. "You ready?" he asked. I smiled, "More than you know." We drove for nearly an hour. The woods thickened. Cell signal dropped to 0. I waited until we passed the last gas station before speaking. "I need to pee," I said casually. He pulled over at a rest stop, empty, quiet, isolated. I stepped out, stretching. "You go first," I said. "I'll walk around a bit." He nodded, headed inside. The second the door closed, I ran. Across the lot, down the side trail, through the trees. I didn't stop until I hit the highway. I flagged down a trucker, told him I was running from a dangerous situation. He didn't ask questions. By the time Ethan realized I was gone, I was 2 counties away. At a safe house provided by a friend of Cheryl's, an ex-nurse who'd survived her own controlling husband, I finally breathed. And then I made the call to a journalist. Because this story wasn't just mine. There were 7 other names, 7 other girls, and Ethan Wilson was not going to erase one more. The journalist's name was Dana Chu. Mid-30s, sharp voice, sharper instincts. We'd only exchanged a few emails before I agreed to meet her in person. I chose a neutral location, a family-run cafe, 2 towns over across the river from where I was hiding. I didn't give her my real name at first. She didn't press. But once I showed her the footage, the fake journal pages, and a scanned copy of the M archive, her professional detachment vanished. You're telling me, she said, slowly tapping the screen of her tablet, that this man has a pattern of psychologically conditioning women, romantically, emotionally, maybe even physically, and documenting it like a lab experiment. Yes, I replied, and I'm the current subject, M8. She sat back, her coffee forgotten. Jesus Christ. I leaned forward. Can you prove it? Can we stop him? Dana didn't blink. If what you've shown me is real, and it looks very real, then this is more than a profile piece. This is an exposé. But we need more. More voices, more victims, and the key, someone he doesn't expect to talk. We started digging together, quietly, anonymously. Dana ran searches on each of the initials in the archive, cross-referencing timelines and photos I'd captured with missing person reports, police blotters, even small-town obituaries. Some were dead ends, but some weren't. M2 was likely Hannah, a woman from Connecticut, who'd gone missing 2 years ago. Officially, she was listed as a runaway. Her mother had received one final text, just one line. I'm fine. Please don't look for me. Dana found a podcast episode about her case, and in the background of a blurry photo from the only known sighting of Hannah Post's disappearance, Ethan. Just his shoulder, his profile partially obscured, but unmistakably him. Same coat, same haircut. M4 Emma was harder. The entry in the binder suggested she had reverted to baseline and was reassigned to family control. We didn't know what that meant, but we did find a woman named Emma Sinclair, now institutionalized in a private mental health facility outside of Boston. Her records were sealed, but we had enough. Enough to go to the police. No, not yet. Because Ethan hadn't technically abused me, not in a way that left bruises or broken locks. He hadn't struck me, he hadn't raped me, he hadn't kidnapped me. What he had done was far more sophisticated, and far harder to prove. But there was another way. I agreed to be recorded. Dana set up hidden Mike's cameras. She asked questions. I told the story from the beginning, every invasion, every manipulation, every red flag I'd ignored, because love had blurred the lines between protection and possession. She asked about Ava. I told her about the red dress. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. I think Ava might be alive. I sat up straight. What? I've been posting discreet inquiries on private forums, support groups for abuse survivors, women who've escaped cult-like dynamics, therapists who specialize in coercive control. Someone responded. She called herself Ren. But she used language that matches your journal entries, specifically Ethan's language. Dana pulled up the message. He used to call me a phoenix, said I had to burn to be reborn. He gave me new clothes, new hair, new name. He said Ava was too heavy, so I became Emily. But I never really stopped being her. The timestamp on the post was recent. She's in Portland now, Dana said, living under the radar. I think she's scared. But if we can reach her, we might be able to bring Ethan down, I whispered. The next week was a blur. Dana flew to Portland, met with Emily in a quiet public park. She brought flowers, a neutral gesture. She wore a hidden camera and a necklace with a mic embedded in the pendant. I waited by my burner phone for updates. When the call finally came, Dana's voice was shaking. It's her, it's Ava, and Cassie, he tried to erase her. Ava Emily had been through hell. Ethan had isolated her, stripped her identity, staged a fake breakup so cleanly her friends and family thought she'd joined some yoga commune in the Rockies. He'd created social posts on her behalf, closed her accounts, rerouted her mail. He wanted me to disappear, she told Dana. He said it was the only way to become pure. But she escaped. Barely. After faking an overdose and being hospitalized, she fled under a new name. He thinks I'm dead, she said, or empty. I think he's moved on. Dana asked if she'd testify. Ava hesitated, then nodded. I'll speak, but only if she's safe, she said, pointing to my photo. He doesn't like losing control. He'll come for her next. She was right, because that same night Ethan showed up at my old apartment. Cheryl called me in a panic. He was banging on the door, Cassie, shouting. I didn't open, but he left something. A note, I asked. No, she said. A red dress, on a hanger, just like the one you described, with a tag pinned to the front. What did it say? Cheryl's voice broke. Come home, Ava. It's time to reset. My blood turned to ice. He didn't just know I was gone. He knew I knew. And he was rewriting the script in real time. He no longer saw me as Cassie. I had failed to become M8. So now, he was trying to recast me as M6. As Ava. He wasn't searching for me. He was hunting for her ghost. And if we didn't stop him, he would simply find the next woman. Rewrite the next identity. Start the next file. Dana insisted I leave town. Not just for a few days, but indefinitely. He left the dress, Cassie, she said over the phone. He's trying to reabsorb you into his story. And when that doesn't work, he'll escalate. They always do. We booked a short-term rental under a fake name, a sparse furnished cabin 4 hours north in New Hampshire. Dana arranged everything. She even paid for it herself. I don't want him finding a paper trail, she told me. You're off-grid now. I packed what little I needed, a duffel of clothes, my laptop, and the binder. Yes, the archive. I didn't trust it in anyone else's hands. Not yet. Not until we had airtight evidence, multiple survivors, and a legal strategy. Before I left, I checked the doorbell cam at my old house one last time. Ethan had returned. This time he wasn't alone. A woman stood next to him, early 20s, with pale blonde hair and a nervous smile. She clutched a potted plant. Ethan rang the bell and looked directly at the camera. Come meet your replacement, he seemed to be saying with his eyes. Then he waved and left the plant on the porch. Inside it was a card. Dana texted me a photo of it. Every phoenix burns twice, love-y. At the cabin, I barely slept. I'd wake at 3:17 a.m. every night, the same time, with the image of the red dress flashing behind my eyes. I'd hear phantom footsteps on the deck, smell his cologne in the sheets even though I knew it was impossible. I started documenting everything in my journal again like Ava had. I recorded timestamps, dreams, even imagined conversations with Ethan. I called it the unmaking file, because that's what I was doing now, unmaking him, unspooling every thread of his performance until the mask slipped and people saw the monster beneath. But then something happened I couldn't explain. The power went out. No storm, no wind, just darkness. The next morning I found a single cigarette butt on the gravel near the back window. I don't smoke. Neither did Dana. But Ethan did. Always the same brand, Dunhill Red. Dana drove up the next day with 2 police officers. You're not safe, she said. We need to go on offense. No more hiding. So we filed a report. With Ava's permission, we submitted her statement too. We shared copies of the journal entries, the time-stamped footage, and our compiled archive of evidence against Ethan: photos, texts, voice recordings, the red dress, the card, everything. The detective, a grizzled woman named Renee Malloy, listened carefully. She didn't call us crazy. Didn't tell us we were overreacting. Instead, she asked the question I hadn't dared say out loud. Do you think he's done this more than 8 times? Dana and I looked at each other, and slowly I nodded. I think the archive starts at M1, I said. But that doesn't mean there weren't women before that. Ones he didn't bother writing about. Or the ones who never escaped. Malloy opened an official investigation. A special unit was formed, domestic coercion and psychological control. A mouthful. But finally, a recognition that the harm Ethan inflicted didn't require bruises to be real. They tapped a digital forensics team. Found fragments of hidden folders in his cloud backup, partially deleted photos, messages, even a spreadsheet labeled tolerances. Tolerances. Each subject had columns: isolation level, autonomy deviation, emotional compliance, breakpoint. I was listed as M8, unstable. Ava, M6, reboot denied. And M9, unfilled. A blank row. Ready for the next one. We had enough to move forward. They issued a search warrant. Arrested him in his apartment without incident. Ethan smiled the whole time, like it was all part of the story. Cassie, he said as they cuffed him, I hope they let you testify. I'd love to hear how you spin it. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because this time he wouldn't be the narrator. The story hit national news. Dana published the piece. A viral headline. The Phoenix Files. How one woman exposed a master manipulator who treated love like an experiment. Survivors came forward. Not just women. A former assistant who quit after finding weird mood graphs in Ethan's home office. A therapist who'd seen Ava but couldn't speak publicly until now. Even a teacher from Ethan's high school who remembered him doing a senior project on emotional mapping, complete with diagrams of female faces and handwritten labels like yield, resist, break. They called it an intellectual predator case, the first of its kind. At the arraignment, Ethan represented himself. Of course he did. He told the judge he was writing a book, said we were all willing characters in a play, that no one had ever told him no. Until I did. But here's the part that never made it into the article. The part I still dream about. Weeks after his arrest, I got a letter. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single line. Stories end when we let them. You haven't let go, Cassie, which means neither have I. I gave it to the police. They couldn't trace it, but they confirmed it was his handwriting, and that was enough to revoke his bail. He's in custody now, awaiting trial, but sometimes I still wonder, was I just M8, or was I finally the one who burned him back? Either way, I know this. Love is not control. Love is not a file. And I am not a subject in someone else's experiment. I'm the author now, and this is the last chapter I'll ever write about him. Ava came to visit me the week before the trial. It was the first time we met in person. She stood on the porch of my new place, one I chose without anyone's input, without compromise. A modest apartment on the second floor of a brownstone in Cambridge, sunlight pouring through tall windows, no shadows in the corners. When I opened the door, she smiled softly. Not the guarded kind I remembered from her photos. Not the hollow smile of someone surviving. This one was different. She told me you'd be taller, Ava said. She, I asked. Dana, she grinned. She talks about you like you're some kind of hurricane. We hugged. It was awkward, then not. Over mugs of tea, we sat at my tiny kitchen table and sifted through the debris of our mutual past. I used to think I was crazy, she said. Because he never hit me, never yelled, just pulled strings until I forgot where I ended and he began. I nodded. He never had to raise his voice, just an eyebrow. Ava looked down at her mug. Do you ever wonder why he wrote it all down? The archive? She nodded. All those notes, the code names, the data, why? I didn't have an answer at first. But then I said, maybe because he didn't see us as real. Only stories. And he thought he was the author. Ava leaned back in her chair, exhaling. So what does that make us now? Editors, I said, and this time we get to rewrite the ending. The trial was brutal. The defense called me unstable, claimed I had delusions of persecution, that the archive was fictional, a collaborative fantasy Dana and I had invented to destroy Ethan's career. They tried to paint Ava as bitter, a jilted ex, said her memories were suspect, said our accusations were unprovable because they left no marks. They didn't need to. The archive spoke for itself. When the jury read their verdict guilty on multiple counts of coercive control, unlawful surveillance, and identity manipulation, Ethan didn't flinch. He just stared at me, like he was still trying to write the next page in his head. But there were no more pages. Because I wasn't there for him anymore. I was there for me. For Ava. For every woman who'd ever doubted her own sanity in the face of a smile. After the sentencing, I stood outside the courthouse with Dana, Ava, and Latair Malloy. The sun was setting. Reporters called my name asking for quotes. I ignored them. Instead, I turned to Ava. What now? She tilted her head. Now we breathe. And after that, whatever the hell we want. We exchanged numbers again. Real numbers this time. Not aliases, not encrypted burners. She hugged me again before heading to her car. Hey, she said before leaving. Promise me something. Anything. If I ever text you red dress, you drop everything and come running. I smiled. Deal. 3 months later, I started a support group. Not in a church basement, not online, but in a public space with windows and light and open doors. We called it The Unwritten Chapter. At first, it was just me, Dana, and Ava, then 5 women, then 10. Some had stories like ours, subtle, psychological, impossible to explain at parties. Others were fresh out of hell and didn't have the words yet. We gave them language. And more than that, we gave them witnesses. We didn't share advice, we shared the mic. And every time a woman said, I know this sounds crazy, but we leaned in. We knew it wasn't crazy. It was just unspoken. Until now. One night, I got a message from an anonymous number. They're making a documentary about him. I didn't respond. Another message followed. Wouldn't you like to tell your side? I blocked the number. Some stories don't deserve a retelling. They deserve silence. I moved again recently. Same city, new apartment. This time I signed the lease alone. No shared name. No spare keys handed over. Just me. A small blue couch with my own throw pillows. A cabinet organized the way I like. And a closet where every dress is exactly where I want it. If you're still watching, if you've made it this far, then maybe this story found you for a reason. Maybe you've felt the chill of control masked as love. Maybe someone rearranged your world so slowly you didn't even notice until you didn't recognize yourself in the mirror. I hope this helped you remember that you are real, that your story belongs to you, that you don't need permission to start over. And if you need someone to tell you it's not your fault, let it be me. You are not crazy. You are not alone. And you are never too late to reclaim the pen. Black screen, soft breath, final whisper. He doesn't win. I do. I didn't think I'd ever hear from Andrew again. But life has a way of circling back, testing you, tempting you, dragging up everything you thought you'd buried. It started with a letter, a real one, handwritten, no return address. The handwriting stopped me cold. I'd stared at it for years on grocery lists, love notes, passive-aggressive reminders left on the fridge. Now it was back in blue ink on cream stationery. I let it sit on my counter for 3 days before I opened it. Inside was a single sentence. I think you deserve to know what they told me before the wedding. That was all? No signature, no explanation. My first instinct was to burn it. But something inside me, a haunted, curious, slightly masochistic part, needed to know. I texted Ava. He wrote me, Andrew says he wants to tell me something from before the wedding. She replied instantly, don't go alone. I wasn't planning to go at all. That's cute, but we both know you're going. She wasn't wrong. We met at a coffee shop in Beacon Hill. Neutral ground. He looked older, not just aged, but worn. Like a suit that had been dry cleaned one too many times. Still recognizable, but stretched thin. I didn't speak first. He did. They told me not to marry you. My breath caught. Who? My parents, the night before the wedding. I stared at him. They said you were manipulative, controlling, that you were isolating me, that your independence was dangerous. I blinked. They said I was dangerous. They showed me emails, he continued, eyes fixed on his coffee. Ones you sent your mom, conversations with friends, stuff you wrote when you were upset. They'd been monitoring your phone for months. My blood went cold. What do you mean monitoring? He looked up. They cloned your phone, installed spyware through a fake email attachment. They read everything. I sat back stunned. Why are you telling me this now? He paused. Because I let them. I didn't stop it. I didn't protect you. I let them turn me into their puppet and then blamed you for pulling the strings. His eyes filled with tears. I thought you should know. I walked out without saying another word. Not because I was angry, though I was. Not because I didn't deserve more, because I did. But because I finally understood, closure doesn't come from the people who broke you. It comes when you stop needing their confession. That night I lay awake replaying everything through a new lens. The sudden changes in Andrew's behavior before the wedding. The tension in his mother's voice. The way my own doubts had been amplified like someone was whispering poison through a wire. Because they were in my inbox, in my texts, in my mind. I'd fought to reclaim my space, but I'd never truly reclaimed my story. Until now. The next morning I did something radical. I printed every page of the archive. Not just Ethan's records, mine too. Emails, journal entries, therapy notes. I laid them out across the floor of my apartment. My life dissected. Then I began writing. Not a diary, not a confession. A book. A manifesto for women who have been undermined, watched, rewritten. I titled the first chapter, They Told Him I Was Dangerous. They were right. 'Cause I am. To people like them. To silence. To shadows. To the myth that love excuses everything. I don't know what happened to Ethan after prison, or if Andrew ever truly changed. I stopped checking. But I do know this. There's a quiet revolution happening in kitchens and bathrooms and bedrooms across this country, women whispering truths to each other through cracked doors and guarded text chains, gathering evidence, connecting dots, comparing scars. They're not crazy. They're dangerous. And they're coming for the silence. One rewritten chapter at a time. I launched the book quietly. No big announcement, no press tour, no eager social media campaign. Just a single link. Shared in a private forum filled with women who told stories like mine sisters, daughters, wives, mothers, all of them with that same haunted look behind their smiles. The kind that says, I know what it's like to be erased. Within days, the link went viral, not on the news, but in group chats, in late-night emails sent from burner accounts, in whispered conversations between coworkers in break rooms. They read it like scripture, like someone had cracked open their own lives and translated their rage into language. One woman wrote, I thought I was the only one, until I read your words. Another said, your story is mine, except it was my brother, and it didn't stop at the kitchen. And another, I left him after chapter 7. I packed while he was at work. I changed the locks, too. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt responsible, because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about a war we'd been told we were imagining. And now finally we had a battle cry. 6 months after the release, I was asked to speak at a conference on digital abuse and psychological coercion. It was hosted by a coalition of therapists, legal advocates, and survivors. I stood backstage in a black blazer holding the note cards I knew I wouldn't use. I looked out at the audience. Rows and rows of women with tired eyes and sharp hearts. When I spoke, I didn't read from my book. I told them about the day Margaret rearranged my kitchen, about how I sat in my bedroom too afraid to claim my own space, about how I stayed quiet for months because I didn't want to be seen as the difficult wife. And then I told them how I changed the locks, how I said the word no like it was a hymn, how the silence afterward wasn't lonely, it was sacred. Afterward, a woman approached me. Mid-40s, worn denim jacket, scar just beneath her chin. She didn't say anything at first, just hugged me, then whispered, "Your story saved mine." It's been over a year now. Andrew never reached out again after the coffee shop. His mother sent a final email. "I hope you find peace. We always meant well." I never replied, because I did find peace. But not because of their well-meaning tyranny, because of women like Ava, like Dr. Thompson, like that stranger in the denim jacket, because of my own courage. Because I chose to believe that love without boundaries is just another name for control. I live in a small cottage now. It's quiet, mostly birds and wind and the occasional coyote. There's a lock on the door that only I have the key to. I rearrange my spice rack whenever I damn well please. And sometimes late at night I lie in bed and think about the woman I used to be, the one who apologized for breathing too loudly, the one who tiptoed around other people's expectations like they were landmines. She didn't disappear. She evolved into someone unrecognizable, someone dangerous, someone free. If you're reading this and you feel trapped, listen closely. You are not too sensitive. You are not imagining it. You are not alone. You are a revolution waiting to happen. And the world has no idea what's coming.